yo, welcome to another episode of Super Series Malls. Today, we go back several decades. A big dome was constructed. A big fight also took place there, with the victor of said fight immortalized in the first ever modern shopping mall in the Philippines. And what better fighter to be immortalized than the greatest himself?
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
None other than Ali Mall in Araneta City, Cubao, Quezon City. The story of Ali Mall began in 1952. The Araneta family, one of the old elite families of the Philippines, were looking to build a new home after their original home was destroyed in the Battle of Manila 7 years ago during World War II. Like many people, they decided to move away from the war-torn streets of the then former capital to the more spacious than new capital of Quezon City. Not too far from the suburban New Manila area, they found a plot of land bordered by Highway 54, or what you all know as EDSA, Aurora Boulevard, and P. Tuazon Boulevard in the district of Cubao. The Radio Corporation of America, or RCA of all things, owned all 35 hectares or 86 acres of the said land. A bunch of radio towers called this land home, yet Jesus Amado Amading Araneta saw a bustling commercial center with pretty much everything under the frying hot Philippine sun in it. But not before setting up their family mansion in the area, which they called the Bahay na Puti, literally a White House. No, not that White House. A Philippine National Bank branch and a Manila-based department store called Aguinaldo first opened in this area in 1956, but Amading wanted something quite ambitious to kickstart the development of this area. A Madison Square Garden with a bit of the Roman Colosseum mixed together in one big dome, literally. Business advisors and even friends of Amading thought this was a bad idea, but he was like,
How about I do anyway?
They brought in architect and engineer respectively Dominador Lacson and Leonardo Onghunco Nugto to design and build this multipurpose arena. A big multipurpose arena. Construction took place between 1957 and 1959. And on March 16, 1960, the 36,000-seater Araneta Coliseum opened to a boxing match between Filipino legend Gabriel Flash Elorde and Harold Gomes. Nicknamed the Big Dome, it was the largest domed arena in Asia from its opening until the year of 2001, with a dome diameter of 108 meters or 354 feet. Massive. But do you know what's even bigger? The erection of many new developments around Cubao. I'm sure Amading himself also had one. These new developments included a 147-store strip mall along Aurora Boulevard, which included the aforementioned Aguinaldo department store as one of its tenants. Following shortly were the nation's Cinerama Theater and the 3,500-seater U Frontier Cinema Theater, the latter being at the time the largest theater in the country. It even included a skating rink. Even more theaters, stores, and restaurants would pop up in the Cubao area, including the old COD department store and its famous animated Christmas displays. I guess everyone really wanted to capitalize on that sweet, sweet Coliseum crowd. In 1969, the Coliseum Farmers Market and Shopping Center opened. or the Farmers Plaza as you may know it now. It's a public wet market, or palengke, with a bit of a mallish commercial area above it. More on this building in another video, but it's safe to say this is a precursor of things to come. In 1970, Amading retired from the Araneta Group, with his son George taking the helm of the company. Unfortunately, well, nothing totally happened on September 21, 1972. Totally nothing. But because of that thing that totally didn't happen, the development in the Araneta Center slowed down in the 70s. They presumably still rode bank on events at the Araneta Coliseum, seems like, so it's okay. On the topic of riding bank though, on October 1, 1975, the Araneta Coliseum would host its biggest event yet. What would become one of the greatest matches in the history of the sport of boxing. The third iteration of a fight between two storied GOATs of any sport in history. A fight so brutal, the winner of said match claimed they both entered it as champions and came back out as old men. They need not too long of an introduction, even though this is already kinda long. Muhammad, the greatest Ali, versus Smokin' Joe Frazier, the Thrilla in Manila.
I don't know what they score for aggressiveness in the Philippines, but it's all over.
He is the greatest fighter of all times next to me.
Except for you.
George Araneta was so proud of hosting such an event. So proud, he wanted to immortalize Muhammad Ali in a development in the Araneta Center. And how exactly would they honor the GOAT? A shopping mall. Let them cook though. George presented to Muhammad Ali the proposal to name his new shopping mall in his name. And guess what? Muhammad Ali liked the idea so much, he allowed the usage of his name without Araneta paying any royalties to him. Araneta hired the Sindiong Ocampo architect and construction firm to design and build this boxing legend monument with a bit of a shopping mall in it. Construction took place not long after the Thrilla in Manila took place, and it took less than a year to finish. And on June 30, 1976, the Muhammad Ali Shopping and Cinemall, wow, that's quite a mouthful, opened to the public with the greatest himself attending as the guest of honor. Patsy Paterna, managing director of the OG tenant Pape Melroti, recalled how the lobby was filled with a massive cake that everyone could eat.
The really exciting experience was when Ali Mall opened because Muhammad Ali came to cut the ribbon and there was a huge cake which filled the whole lobby and everybody was able to eat cake.
I mean, meeting the greatest right there and then eating cake. What more could you ask from a grand opening of a mall? It opened with about 32 stores, a lot of which are long gone, but some familiar names do pop up here, namely Uniwide Sales.
We're growing even bigger with a growing number of big projects for a little more excitement in your life. Uniwide Holdings Incorporated, the company that won't stop growing.
The aforementioned Pape Melroti, a religious-themed gift shop, opened its first branch on opening day and is still at the mall to this day. Another familiar name that opened here may not be too familiar to y'all, other than, you know, the ice cream, the Magnolia Alley Ice Cream House. Well, the other Magnolia Ice Cream House in Cubao eventually became Jollibee. You know what happens next. Another familiar chain is the American pizza chain, Shakey's, the second branch ever in the Philippines. OGers of the mall would remember a live band playing in this particular branch of the restaurant. It's unfortunately not here anymore, but it still has a branch within the Araneta city. The mall opened with 2 movie theaters in the Ali Mall Cineplex, the first cinemas to be in a shopping mall in the country, and adding to the already massive number of cinemas in the Cubao area at the time. Ali Mall was built in two phases. The one that opened on June 30, 1976 was the two-level Phase 1. It already included everything listed in the flyer. The four-level Phase 2 and its multi-level parking garage seemed to have been built a little later, with two consultants from the US brought in to give this new wing a cursory vibe check. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an exact date as to when Ali Mall Phase 2 opened, but it seemed to have opened on a November or a December, as implied by this ad's mention of a, quote, holiday buying season. If anybody grew up with this mall, feel free to chime in the comments as to what year you remember Phase 2 opening in. After the opening of Phase 2, Ali Mall's store count ballooned to 200 stores and 26 restaurants with a floor area of 62,000 square meters. It contained even more entertainment facilities, like a ringside lobby bar and a first-class ballroom. Fancy! They even doubled their cinema count from 2 to 4. And oh yeah, for good measure, they added a skating rink called Skate Town, at the time the largest indoor skating rink in the country. And for an even better measure, they added a food court at the lower ground floor called Food Gallery. Imagine saying you're going to the Sogo bedroom fair. Although there are a lot of precursors to malls at the time, including Green Hills Vero Mall, which opened a year earlier than Ali Mall, and even Araneta's own Farmers Plaza opening even earlier, Ali Mall is still considered to be the first in terms of a modern shopping mall with the typical tropes of a mall you see today. The first mall to include a food court and entertainment and leisure facilities like a skating rink and a Cineplex all in one. It opened just before another early so-called all-in-one shopping mall located in the Malate area of Manila City, the Martel family's Harrison Plaza, now long demolished sadly for a new SM mall. Seemingly because of Ali Mall's success, a little-known budding department store called Shoe Mart opened next to Ali Mall in 1978. And there's also a Rustan's next to it. Funny enough, this mall never really had a proper department store anchor per se, but more on that later. Other than Ali Mall and perhaps SM Cubao, the development at the Araneta Center continued to stagnate into the 1980s. Absolutely not helped by the volatile situation in the Philippines in that decade. But, well, there was another danger around, starting in 1985. We go a bit north of the Araneta Center, at the intersection of EDSA and North Avenue. That one little-known department store across Ali Mall called Shoe Mart bought a swampy plot of land in the area. And whatever was built there would change the landscape of malling and even culture in the country forever. And oh yeah, for good measure, Farmers Plaza would suffer a fire on that same year. Although the Aranetas had renewed hope post people power and planned to build new projects finally, they were thwarted once again by coup attempts in the late 1980s. They were also fresh from rebuilding Farmers Plaza. And so, the Araneta Center entered the 1990s with brand new malls in brand new business districts that offered more than their own one led by a coliseum. So they just sat there, waiting for something, all the while watching long-established department stores, theaters, and other places close due to neglect and obsolescence from the shiny new malls around the metro. Even they considered demolishing the Coliseum at one point. But Ali Mall seemingly held on. It's still the mall most hyper-local to Cubao itself, New Manila, and the project areas of Quezon City, in spite of the new malls from SM and the like. And speaking of SM, the SM and Rustan's across the mall still exist, and still also getting foot traffic. But the survival of this iconic mall also depends on the survival of the center itself. And, well, in 1996, the Metro Rail Transit Line 3, or MRT3, began construction which would run along most of EDSA. Already, the Araneta saw this as an opportunity to revitalize the complex, as it is bordered by one of the Metro's most crucial thoroughfares, which so happened to be the route of the new Metro line. But that's not all. Along Aurora Boulevard would see the construction of the LRT2. Once again, this is one of the major roads that borders the Araneta Center. The center's about to get not one, but two major Metro lines having an interchange point. George Araneta must be extremely high on hopium at that point. Initially, the Aranetas talked about creating a joint venture with fellow real estate firm Ayala Land and mining corporation Atok Big Wedge Co. for a redevelopment master plan of the Araneta Center. Well, due to the financial crisis of 1997, they decided to do the bold move of overseeing the whole thing by themselves, with a little bit of loans and whatever is left of their wealth, and a lot of hopium. In 2000, the 80 billion peso Araneta Center master plan was unveiled, with a goal of revitalizing the Araneta Coliseum and eventually the revitalization of the center as a walkable, transit-oriented garden city, a way to fully take advantage of the new train lines. It started off, of course, with the renovation of the Araneta Coliseum, but they've also gone and renovated Farmers Plaza, which gained a direct connection to the Araneta Center Cubao station of the MRT3. These were completed in 2001, and the following year saw the construction of Araneta's new hypermodern shopping mall, the 6-story, 100,000 square meter Gateway Mall, which opened on October 15, 2004. Definitely a mall for another episode. This mall is directly connected, this time, to the Araneta Center Cubao station of the LRT2, and it featured a direct bridgeway to Farmers for easy interchanging of lines to and from the LRT2 and MRT3. Man, if only the rest of the metro were like this. But what about Ali Mall? It's still chugging along, but there's no renovation plan yet. It seemed like Araneta wanted to focus on their shiny new mall first. Well, at least SM Cubao also hasn't renovated either. But Rustans had already jumped ship to Gateway. But eventually, it happened. In the late 2000s, Araneta initiated its long overdue 200 million peso redevelopment of Ali Mall with new, honestly a bit whitewashed, interiors and a bit of rezoning. The 4-cinema Ali Mall Cineplex was relocated from Phase 1 to the top level of Phase 2, presumably replacing the old ballroom. The food court followed suit, being placed adjacent to the new Cineplex at the same level. An anchor took the place of the old Cineplex, a fairly massive shoe store, very creatively called Shoe Center. I guess this is the anchor story the mall's been waiting for, huh? Not really. Included in the redevelopment is the Skywalk, which connected Ali Mall directly to the newly renovated SM Cubao, which gained an SM supermarket and a cyber zone in its former basement food court, which still had a food court and a new parking garage as well, for good measure. Now this is the honorary department store and supermarket anchor that the mall's been waiting for. The mall would see a bit of a new renaissance, with new stores and restaurants popping up in it again, and it would cruise through the 2010s with not much drama, all the while Araneta's busy building its new condos, hotels, and office towers. But 2017 would see the closure of the Shoe Center, and in its place, a restaurant row called the Food Lane. The last new addition to the mall would come in the form of the AliX. AliX. I wonder if the name is on purpose. A part of the second floor of Phase 1 dedicated to anything nostalgic, including stores for antique and novelty items, vinyl records, and even vintage electronics. I mean, yeah, it's got the vibe. Fun fact, Araneta owns the franchise of Pizza Hut, Dairy Queen, and Taco Bell in the Philippines, which kind of explains why they have like a bajillion branches in the Araneta city. The four-screen Ali Mall Cineplex 4, like most mall cinemas in the country, would close during the global events of 2020. The cinemas reopened on November 2021, but curiously, it would intermittently close from time to time, even as the pandemic eased. It seemingly reopened in November of 2023, but ever since, it has remained closed. Almost a carbon copy of what happened to Festival Mall's original 10 cinemas. It didn't help matters that Gateway Mall and its 10-screen Cineplex exist directly connected to two busy railway stations. To add another knockout punch to the first mall cinemas in the country is the opening of Gateway Mall 2, which not only tripled the floor area of Gateway 1, but added a whopping 8 additional movie theaters, for a total of 18 cinemas in the Gateway complex. There are no concrete plans as to what Araneta will be doing to the Ali Mall Cineplex 4. It just sits there, longing to be used again. Other than that, this mall is still here, existing together with SM Cubao as a nostalgic trip, despite its power-washed interiors, to a time shopping malls were not the default go-tos for hanging out yet, and how this could very well be the start of it all. If Ali Mall and Harrison Plaza were the spark, then I guess SM North would be the fire? It's definitely not the main mall of the Araneta city anymore as it was back in the 70s, that role being filled by Gateway, which, by the way, will get a third expansion soon. But on that topic, kudos to the Araneta group for keeping this mall. It would have been so easy to just demolish 50 years of history for a shinier development, especially when they've got Gateway already as their cash cow mall. But they still kept it around, just for the nostalgia, and for the greatest, from Louisville, Kentucky. The Araneta Center, now the Araneta City, is said to be, quote, the city of firsts. What more to show you're one of the first by keeping the memory of a goat who participated in a legendary fight in your Coliseum alive and well in the first ever shopping mall in the country, which most importantly is still alive. And well, if you ever get lost in the metro, just remember, all roads lead to Cubao. And Cubao has the place where you can pay respect to the greatest and the grandfather of malls.